Good morning, Dr. Hiren Gohain. It's an absolute pleasure to have this conversation at such a critical point in Assam's history and in the country's history. We'll talk about both issues, but let's begin with Assam. You have been in the capital, Delhi, for the last 3 days, speaking and giving lectures at Jamia Millia and also at the Jawaharlal Nehru University on the recent issues around the National Register of Citizens, the NRC. Would you like to explain to us the criticality of the NRC process and how it needs to be completely fair and unbiased?
As far as I can see, it is not much understood outside Assam because people don't have a grasp of the compelling historical antecedents, events leading up to it. And we cannot jump out of history just like that. We should not remain prisoners of the past, but we have to deal with something that survives in order to transcend it. Now, to make a long story short, it was the colonial imperialist policy first to divide the Hindus and Muslims. It has been effective so far. It has survived partition and independence. And the unfortunate thing is that, see, in the decades before independence, thanks to the communal politics in the country and the mobilization of the Muslim League, the immigrant Muslim peasants who had entered Assam, say between 1901 and 1930, late 1940s, they were, staunch supporters of the League. And when the demand for Pakistan came up, they also supported. And it has left a bad memory. Why did they demand Pakistan? Because of their demand for land in Assam. The funny thing is that, the colonial masters, on the one hand, promoted, unregulated migration from Bengal. And at the same time, in Assam, stoked fears through official documents about the threat of the migration to the Assamese and the indigenous communities. For example, in the census report in 1931, the census superintendent for the whole of Assam compared it to an invasion and called the immigrant Muslim peasants vultures. At the same time, as when the railways were allowing these peasants to travel to Assam at 5 rupees, a long distance for just 5 rupees. Each ticket cost 5 rupees. And then again, the migration might have been stopped by the center, which had, most of the powers at that time. And the provincial government only had the power to allot land or refuse it. So they were, and the 1948-45 Government of Act, so cleverly composed the Legislative Assembly seats that no government lasted more than 1 year. 9 pins. And in that situation, migration continued unchecked. And though in the beginning people supported them, they welcomed that first, because so much of wasteland can be put under a plow, and so on and so forth. But then, when people began to feel that it might, threaten their rights to land, whatever lands remained, and particularly the tribals, who were worried because under imperialist land laws, they had no land rights because of the traditions and customs which could not be adjusted to the idea of private property and land. So there were furious tribal protests about this migration and the danger to their existence. And the Assamese peasantry also felt the same, because Assam was at the same mainly rural country, towns containing not more than 5 to 10,000 people. Yeah, and that's why there was a conflict, and there was also clash between two ways of life. Apart from language and culture, the very mode of cultivation was different. Much of the lowland, called wasteland, were used by the local farmers for winter crops. And they also supplied more or less, good supply of fish, which was a cheap source of protein in those days. And then, there also, because of misunderstanding and because of the fact that settlements are haphazard, there was no civil administration. Those communities are not governed by any panchayat or anything. They are ruffianly headmen, known as matbars, who occupied most of the land, giving a few acres to individual farmers, who followed them. So that was the kind of, and instead of looking into all those, the Muslim League leaders, they raised demands simply for more land, more and more land, so that there was an inevitable clash. And when they supported Pakistan as a sort of climax to this communalized politics, people were very worried in Assam. There was a tumultuous mass movement, and also in the end somehow we survived the scare. And this has unfortunately remained in public memory, underground, but it remains. And the immigrant Muslims who could not leave Assam after partition, they were in a kind of limbo. There was no security at first. And people in Assam, they thought that since they demanded Pakistan, they could be and should be driven away. So at first in the late 40s, there was a few incidents of violence. But the Congress leadership was wise. They handled it so that no such violence recurred. They did not encourage it. And they came to some understanding with the immigrant Muslims that if they agreed to accept Assamese as the medium of instruction and civil administration, then they will be given no trouble. They will have rights of citizens. They were given land rights. Not all of them, because those living in the interior, not reached by poor communications on those days, they knew nothing about land rights. They had no land rights, but they were actually entitled to it. So all those complex things remained. And unfortunately, after a decade or so, the basic problems of the situation were not looked into. And it is rightly alleged the Congress might have tried to use them as vote banks. Instead of, say, promoting healthcare, education, and knowledge of family planning, what the Congress did was to assure them of security and get their votes, solid votes, which enabled the Congress to survive in power for, I think, about more than 20 years, maybe about 30 years. Say about 30 years. But then, when the Assam movement began, there was a very peculiar juncture of circumstances. Myron Weiner, an American political scientist, he came out with a book. He not only gave figures of the phenomenal rise of Muslim population in Assam, but also hinted in academic language that this might be a threat to the local population. He did not use the word threat, but
it was there.
He sort of projected the picture in such a way that was the logical conclusion. And it is funny that, he did not talk about citizens and foreigners. He talked about the immigrants. And even those who came long before 47, they were included in it. That was the bias.
So it was more of a communal argument.
I would say so. They took it for granted that it was impossible to cross this communal barrier. This was an assumption that was thoroughly undemocratic. But he was a respected scientist, and the book was hailed as a kind of, conclusive proof of the future dominance of foreigners in Assam. And I would give you one more interesting nugget of information. The Central Election Commissioner, Shakdher, in a public press conference in Guwahati in 1979, declared that there are numerous foreigners on the voters list in Assam. At that time, I think the Congress was in power in Delhi. So it is interesting. And then you see, and also people in Assam, because of and I think it was just at the point that RSS people began to get in. I think not openly. Some of the dormant members in Assam became active, and they gave it a rather communal twist. A chap called Rajat Sethi, in a book called The Last Battle of Saraighat or something, he claimed that it was the RSS that had sort of turned the movement into an anti-Bangladeshi movement, gave it an anti-Bangladeshi turn. That is something we should ponder. So that is how it ended. It rolled on for 6 years. Respected journalists like Gullit Nayar and Shekhar Gupta and many others, I have forgotten names, Nirja Chaudhary, they had reported favorably on the movement. You see.
Just hugely problematic.
It was problematic, but outside Assam, in Assam, the people involved in the movement did not think so. They thought it was a question of black and white. And people like us who said it was problematic, we were targeted. And left and democratic forces were targeted. It was also interesting that from the very beginning, some of the leaders had been saying that the left and democratic people are the enemies. They had not opposed this movement directly. They had not said that there should be no distinction between foreigners and citizens. Even so, because they stayed away from the movement, it was claimed from public platforms that these are enemies. Trade unions should be disbanded. And there was no very serious opposition to that. Left, after all, was not a very powerful force in Assam. And so its voice was almost blacked out. Its opinion was blacked out. The local press no longer published their views. They could not address any press conference. Their statements were suppressed. An issue, you see, in this kind of absence of opposition, it is quite natural that the people thought that what they were doing, what they were thinking was the right thing. And the same kind of thing is happening now in India. Or at least some people are trying to make that happen in a broader canvas. So that is the background of the situation. in 1985 an accord was signed, and the Assam leaders movement leaders were compelled to accept 1971 as the cut-off year for the citizenship. And the Muslims at first furiously rejected the case. They didn't accept it. And they sort of cut away from Congress. A party called United Minorities Front was formed, and it gained 17 seats. And the UMF tried their best to mobilize opinion in Assam and in the rest of the country against the Assam Accord. They failed. Most of the leaders went back to the Congress camp. And after all, they could not provide security, which was the most fundamental need of the religious minorities. And after that, they were in the wilderness. And as you know, in 1983, owing to a clash about the elections, whether to boycott it or not, the movement didn't support it. They boycotted it and appealed to people to boycott it. And some people, including some of the minority pockets, they were desperate. They supported the election. They voted. And in retaliation, the massacre at Nelly took place, taking a toll of 2,000 lives. There were also other incidents of violence which had not had much publicity. And the toll was not so high, but they were there. There was an atmosphere of coercion. But the common people were under the perception that it was a just movement based on facts, and the Assamese people were fighting for their rights to existence. That was the perception. And based on the complicated history. And now, because of this, things remained very unstable for some time. And unfortunately, Congress government at the center and the state, a Congress government which was formed in Assam as a result of farcical election, where I don't know what is the percentage of vote, maybe 9-10% or something like that. The Chief Minister is a capable man, but he's a sort of, he's a manager, political manager. He tried to, with the help of the center, to divide that united Assamese bloc and set one ethnic group and tribe against another. And to some extent, he's succeeding. And that sort of, in the meantime, when the AGP had come to power, AGP was formed as a result of the movement, and the student leaders, they were, after all, they had not the slightest idea of administration or policy. And you will have some idea of the things that for about a month they could not then do any work in the capital because thousands of people crowded the secretariat, their houses and chambers of ministers. No work could be got done. And until they appealed to be folded hands to relieve them of this pressure, and so on and so forth. And then they spent their time in felicitations, accepting felicitations, and enjoying it. But Assam was at that time in a critical economic position. and there were urgent, needs to be addressed. These were left in the, back burner, and eventually they became most unpopular. It broke up into two, as you know, AGP and the new AGP and so on and so forth. And then also, the tribals also felt highly disaffected because their demands were not addressed at all. There was a chauvinistic Assamese outlook in the driver's seat. They thought since they had one power, tribal demands could be perhaps, neglected or not given so much importance. And the tribal unrest grew. And the demand for a separate Bodo state, it gained traction. That it went on, and the AGP tried to suppress it, with no very poor results. But gross human rights violations in a place called Bhimbunka, 7 women were raped by the police and so on, and so many things had happened. There were firings. It also embittered the tribals more. And also the other tribes like Mishing and so on, they also began to rebel against this Assamese hegemony. And things became very chaotic. Ultimately, it became free for all. Tribal militants killing both Assamese as well as immigrant Muslims. In a place called Basbari, there was a shelter for immigrant Muslims who had taken refuge there from the fear of militant attacks, tribal militant attacks. In that camp, defended by the CRPF, more than 100 people were gunned down by automatic guns by tribal militants. Many such things happened, and some things like that happened as late as 2008. And the government was at sea. And at that time there were a series of weak governments in the center. And Alpha also began to arise at that time. They began to claim that they were the true saviors of the Assamese nation. And people also turned to them with relief. They thought their national rights, all the demands earlier made were justified. The AGP fellows were traitors, these are the new saviors. So that they were given a sort of carte blanche. They went on the rampage. And the army came to sort of control them. And they also went on the rampage. Army is not suited to deal with these complex issues. These are political issues. And so that, they sort of really, trampled basic civil rights underfoot. And I would say reign of terror was started. So that
and then in 2012. 2012 was terrible again.
No, but it was a kind of late bursts. NDFB, which remained unreconciled to this Bodo peace accord, they went on gunning down people. In Guwahati in 2008, there were 3 simultaneous bomb blasts, killing 100 people, injuring 800, critically injuring 800 people. So you see the violence, the anarchy of those days. On one day I had gone out to collect bottles of milk, for my children. A soldier came up to me, said, "Sir, there is a curfew. You can't move out of the city. You can't. We don't have." There's a milk depot, government milk depot. I buy milk from there every day. I must go and collect milk for them. They won't understand the curfew. He put the gun here. Don't argue. Fortunately, a sort of army captain came along. He sort of, disarmed the air, took me along to the big boat which was empty, and I came back empty-handed. This was the situation. Curfew could be imposed at any time. And in the villages, once I had gone to attend a meeting by bus. I saw many elderly people, kneeling down in a plot of land, in a field, rice field, paddy field. What's happening? They are sitting like this. And I was told that because this is supposed to be a kind of alpha affected village, therefore the elderly people are being sort of punished like this.
By the army.
Huh?
By the army.
By the army. And many people are taken to the army camp and brought back dead to the police station. This was the result of so-called interrogation. And Muslims were in total insecurity. During these times, same are political elements, some civil society groups, responsible journalists, people like us, we got together. We, created a sort of joint platform, and we tried to sort of bring about some sort of understanding among conflicting communities and raise the demand for peace and normalcy above all. First peace and normalcy, then you can enter into conversation about our demands and needs. And this, fortunately, people were so in such straits, they realized that there was no other way out. And the leading Muslim clerics, including a very active leader of the Jamiyat Ulama-e-Hind, Maulana Abdul Haq, they came along. Some democratic tribal leaders came along. They also joined this platform. We allowed them to address the public meetings along with us. And they proclaimed there that yes, we have accepted Assam in 1971 as the cut-off year. That also, relieved the anxieties in the minds of both Assamese and the tribals, that something at least has been achieved to ensure their rights to land and their survival in their homeland. This is a very basic sentiment. And then, gradually, with some hiccups, normalcy returned. So the NRC demand was a result of this situation. So the NRC should not be construed as a diabolical plot engineered by some anti-minority forces.
Linguistic or religious?
Linguistic or religious. And the linguistic thing, actually, it doesn't have much influence in the Assam Valley. And it was actually raised from Barak Valley, which was not affected by the Assam movement. And in any case, in the NRC, only about 2 lakh people got left out there in Barak Valley. And in West Bengal also, in spite of their attempts, it didn't have much influence. It didn't arouse public opinion. People there are more critical, perhaps a little more mature. They have all gone through all kinds of political vicissitudes. So they understand the danger of listening to such, inflammatory propaganda. Whereas we are learning it in Assam. And as for this minorities thing, we have to remember that 3.29 crore people have applied, have filed applications with claims to citizenship. That is almost the vast majority of the inhabitants. Some people don't feel the need. Some people think that their citizenship is secure. Some are from outside Assam. Some may not have applied. But 3.29 crore people have applied. And more than 2 crores, and I don't exactly remember the figure, have already been accommodated. Now there are 40 lakhs left. The unfortunate thing is that since it's a very serious business, there should have been some preliminary study about how to go about the process. Because common people have no idea of citizenship, nor about their rights or the nature of official documents. And official proceedings in such matters are also laxing. My own name appears in some documents, Hiren, in some Hiren. So you see, in the case of ordinary people, all kinds of things happen. They are not aware of it, particularly if they are illiterate. They treasure the document. When they bring it out, it is scrutinized in a very bureaucratic manner. Now, your name is Moin Ali, here it is written Mainuddin. That kind of thing is happening, you see. So there should have been a preliminary attempt to go into the modalities first and how to make people understand it. It's a very difficult process, and in the beginning, people had no idea how difficult and complicated it was going to be. They thought that it would be foolproof. The idea of legacy data, antecedents in the 1951 original NRC. There was an original NRC undertaken on the basis of census at the time, 51. Voters list since then. It was considered foolproof. If you can prove your linkage to any of them, then you're a citizen. With the support of some 17 or 18 documents, I don't know the number, remember the number. Accepted by the Supreme Court. And the process made a beginning. There was some resistance in some pocket, and the government immediately stopped it. And it remains sort of in cold storage for quite some time, until somebody appealed to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court ruled. It is very important that you should complete it by such and such time. That's how it goes. A fresh start. And my fear is that the time given appears to have been rather too short to bring about, a completely foolproof, reliable document that ensures fair play to all. That's very necessary. And I hope something should be done about it.
Do you think that is still possible, sir?
Now, this is a sort of difficult question for me to answer. I am in a joint front of left democratic parties and civil rights society groups. We have led several delegations to meet the state coordinator, Pratik Hajela, and explaining to him just his difficulties. Sometimes he listens to them. Sometimes he says, I am helpless. I am under orders of the center, the High Court, the Supreme Court, and the Election Commission. And let me explain some of the very surprising things that have happened. Some people have been at the receiving end of a double whammy.
Double whammy.
Double whammy. You see, I mean, there is something called a Foreigners' Tribunal in Assam. They were put in place as a result of the Assam Accord. In the beginning, there were very few. They worked in a very leisurely pace. Now there are 100 foreigners' tribunals. And the border police, at this late stage, are reporting hundreds of cases of people of doubtful nationality. The foreigners' tribunals. Sometimes the poor people don't get any notice. Sometimes they get the notice elsewhere. They had changed. Because of displacement, because of erosion, people change from one village to another, set up new settlements. So they doesn't know. And ex parte, his citizenship claim has been null and void. Many such things happen. And the two things, they have to sort of negotiate with two different processes. And the High Court has ruled, unfortunately, that people who have been declared foreigners by the Foreigners' Tribunal, their names should be dropped from the NRC. This has nothing to do with in essence, with the NRC. They're a different process, but there's a new order.
So basically you're saying that the declared foreigner process and the de-voter process should be completely de-linked.
I think that has been our demand. Let us first complete the NRC.
But do you think even that demand, which is creating so many injustices and complications, will that demand, at least in the short term, be accepted?
No, I mean, what are we here for?
Yeah.
If people all over India were shouting so much about abuses of NRC, they become alive to the process and want to ensure its justice and humanity, then they have to take up consensus on behalf of these poor people.
Yeah.
Simple shouting to the press will not work. Since the Assamese people are, absolutely determined that it should happen. Tribals are determined. They are even more resolute in its support. And on the other hand, you have these people. And by the way, even many tribals have been left out. Many tribals. Because they also have no idea of documents. And the press, unfortunately, has harped on the miseries of the people, not of the defects of the process. If they had been brought to light, and there are so many acute legal brains in the country, people who also believe in human rights, they should come to the assistance. They should provide at least legal assistance. Counsel from, if they cannot go to Assam, they can, lay down certain procedures with which to, claim justice, and so on and so forth. And this has not been done to the best of my knowledge. And so my answer to that, let it remain in place. Let us ask for an extension of time. And also to make the process more humane. And it is a fact. Certain forces, I know, you know what I mean, are trying to communalize the issue, make it an Hindu-Muslim thing. And I don't think the Supreme Court so far is buying it. It has not. And it has sternly rebuked the government of Assam for just suggesting to the NRC coordinator that the Hindu name should be left out of it because of the steps taken by the center
to amend
the Citizenship Act. And recently, Pratik Hajela, the Registrar General of India were again turned in review by the Supreme Court for going out of line, making all sorts of public statements. For example, they said that people who lodge, false complaints which turn out to be baseless against suspected foreigners, they won't be subjected to any punishment. They had to leave room for all kinds of irresponsible complaints.
Particularly an organization like the RSS, which has
they can, produce hundreds, thousands of such complaints. So those things have been at least prevented. So we should expect a little more, bring it to the notice of the Supreme Court, and also appeal to the judges that this is a process of the utmost importance to the country and also to the people. In my view, citizenship is not a favor granted by the government. It's a right to which people are entitled, so that no genuine citizen should be left out. And people are already assuming that all those 40 million people are foreigners, both by the chauvinists in Assam and by the opponents of NRC outside Assam. This is a sort of, as far as I am concerned, unacceptable to me. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir,
Thank
for
you.
stopping.